Welcome to the Legit Football NFL podcast. Brian McFadden here, co-founder of Legit Football. I have an announcement first before we bring in a full roster of guests today. Phillip Fox, who has been joining me on the last probably 4 or 5 episodes, he's the official co-host now. Kevin, welcome to the Legit Football family.
Thank you.
The floor is yours. How are you feeling?
I appreciate it, man. It's truly an honor. I started my podcasting journey with you guys a couple months ago, and we've been having a really good time, having some great discussions, and I'm really excited to continue just chopping it up about football as much as I can, man. And I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, we brought you in the offseason, had you do some workouts, had some interviews, and decided to offer you a contract.
That's right.
Really excited. You're doing some of our TikTok material now, so you guys will start to see Kevin's long flowing mane on TikTok as he goes through the latest headlines from the Legit Football newsletter. We do not have a game to preview. I'm not planning on diving into the Pro Bowl, Kevin. Maybe that'll come up organically as part of a conversation.
Yeah, me and Anthony did a little Pro Bowl 30 minutes last night, so check that out if you feel like hearing some Pro Bowl talk.
If you really want to hear about the Pro Bowl talk and the skills competition and flag football, check out the latest episode of 30 Minutes of Football with Kevin and our producer Anthony Weiner, who is behind the scenes for this episode. So today we're going to introduce what will at least start off as the new format for the Legit Football NFL podcast. First of all, if you're just listening, we are live on YouTube. We are going to be going live for each episode now. We initially started just recording it separately, and we're like, no, screw this. If people want to pop in and say random stuff to us, we do have some regulars, then let's go live. So make sure to check out the video if you're just listening to this on a podcast. But what we're going to do is we're going to start by introducing some legit headlines. We're going to really recap some of what we feel are the top headlines from the Legit Football NFL newsletter, and then we'll dive into a main topic. And today we're going to be talking about some coaching carousel. And I also mentioned, Kevin, that we got a full roster here today. I think this will be the biggest episode as far as guests. So let's go ahead and bring in first Jeff Schiesser, co-host of The Year We Started a Podcast. Not the first time we've had him on this podcast. Not the first time I've podcasted with him. I think we're like to 7 or 8 at this time, Jeff.
Yep, and happy to make it number 8 or 9 or whatever this one is. Should be a fun time. And you know what? I'm just happy to be on a podcast where one of the topics we're going to talk about is offseason buzz, but it's not even the offseason for my team yet. So looking forward to this just distraction from the actual excitement that is going to be next week.
So I'm going to pour some quick cold water on you, Jeff, because I'm going to ask you, what was the first, I think it was the first, might have been the second, episode that you came on and podcasted with me with my old podcast, Pigskin Party? Do you remember?
Well, was it the episode right after the Super Bowl? Or
it was the episode
my gosh.
after the Bucks Chiefs Super Bowl.
Not the good one. Not the good one.
We scheduled that like 3 months in advance. I had never met Jeff. I think we met like in a Reddit forum for podcasters. In his first episode, podcasting with me, he had to recap the Chiefs loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, I'm going to be busy the following Monday, just FYI.
Cannot bring him on.
Made that mistake once.
You're a strong man, Jeff. You're a strong man.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. Ride this Chiefs wave. I picked the Chiefs to beat the Bengals. I was the only one on the show to do that, so take solace in that. Let's also bring in Zach, who is very familiar with Kevin. He is... They've co-hosted together the Coffee Shop Football Podcast, guys?
Yes. That's correct. Yeah, the Coffee Shop Football Podcast. Yeah, Kevin and I are good friends, but it's nice to meet you, Brian. Nice to meet you, Jeff. Never a bad thing to meet a couple more diehard football fans. So I'm happy to hop on the show. Good to see you all this morning, and just happy to be here. I hope I can provide some excellent insight on the coaching carousel.
Let's do it.
I will continue to stick to my reasoning for podcasting is that I just want to talk football with some fellow football fans, and the fact that we record it and put it out to the masses is just a nice bonus. As I mentioned before, we've got our producer Anthony Weiner behind the scenes. Let's go ahead and jump in. As I mentioned, we're going to start with legit headlines. So this is going to be where we pull maybe 3 to 5 headlines from the last few editions of the Legit Football NFL newsletter, which is free, guys. If you have not signed up, go to legitfootball.com. And starting today, we're going to start with some off-season buzz. And before, as like an introduction, there's a lot of quarterback news going around. We're going to save that for Monday's show, Kevin. So here's just a little teaser there. We can bring up quarterback stuff here and there, but I really want to dedicate the main topic on Monday to talk about quarterbacks.
Sweet.
So today, let's talk about the off-season buzz part 1. I think this was from Wednesday or Thursday's edition of the Legit Football podcast. And no particular order. I'm just going to read through the articles, and then any insight you guys have, feel free to share. We don't have a script. We don't have rules. We're just rolling with it. So we'll start with Jacoby Myers. Mike Reese of ESPN writes that the Patriots are expected to be motivated to sign Jacoby Myers to an extension. I should hope so. Who do they have for wide receiver after that? Not a whole lot. The 26-year-old caught 67 passes for 804 yards and 6 touchdowns across 14 games in 2022. Kevin, as a Bills fan, an AFC East connoisseur, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a great move for New England. I would like to see Jacoby Myers hit the open market because, like you said, any less competition in the AFC East works well for me. But honestly, it seems like a no-brainer to me. I think you said it best, Brian, like right off the bat, like who else do they got? You know, they have 3 wide receiver 4s, and Jacoby Myers was really kind of always an elite wide receiver too. So I think you bring Myers back. Maybe you draft a stud if you're New England. If they let him hit the open market, if he gets out, expect him to get a bag. I think he would get paid great. You know, slot guys like that are in high demand right now. That's the quarterback's best friend is a good slot receiver.
Zach, I don't know who your favorite team is, so I should start with there before I queue up any particular news.
No, you're good. I'm technically a Vikings fan.
Technically, okay, we need to dive into that. What is technically? Are you distancing yourself already?
I've told Kevin this, I think, a couple times as well, is that I consider myself almost more of an NFL fan than I am of one team. Nice. And that has also probably come from a lot of the heartbreak. Right. And also the Vikings have just broken my heart one too many times over the years.
Yeah.
But yes, I do. If I'm tuning into just one team a week, it's probably the Vikings, but I probably a bit more of an NFL fan at this point. I tend to hop around a little more than just like a one-team guy.
Well, as a Dolphins fan, but really more of an NFL fan myself, I've already said I'm one Mike McDaniel firing away from not being a Dolphins fan.
Good call.
I've also been burned there. Zach, Jacoby Myers, Kevin mentioned he would get a bag. If you're Jacoby Myers, do you seek to get a deal from another team, or do you stick with the Patriots because that's what you know?
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement. I think if I'm Jacoby Myers, I probably would be seeking for that deal. There's a skim wide receiver market this year in free agency. He's probably the cream of the crop right next to Juju if Juju leaves Kansas City. And I think he can get that Christian Kirk type contract where a lot of people are going to be like, they may have overpaid for this player, but he's probably the best available right now. If I'm Kirk, I'm probably looking for that rather than I don't think New England is going to shell out that wide receiver close to wide receiver 1 money for him. And they don't have a great history of drafting wide receivers. So I'm not sure they can really replace that talent if they don't pay him that bag. So if I'm him, I'm probably looking around. I think there's going to be a lot of teams knocking at his door. And I think he can get that Christian Kirk, that like $70 million contract with his play and his age. Even though he may not be the best wide receiver 1 out there, he may be the best of this free agent class.
Jeff, simply because Zach mentioned Juju as a Chiefs fan, how do you feel about how Juju has contributed? Clearly, he can't fill the giant fast shoes of the cheetah. But how do you feel he's done, and do you want the Chiefs to bring him back?
I'm not sure that we will bring him back. I'm not sure whether or not I would agree with whether. I mean, honestly, it just kind of depends on how the wide receiver market is. I would imagine that this year is we would have to pay quite a premium to be able to keep him on the roster, and that seems unlikely. But as far as like how he's done this year, when he's been healthy and all the way healthy, he is an excellent wide receiver to play alongside Travis Kelce because he does a lot of the things that Travis can do without us having to rely completely on Travis. So like the sitting down in the zone. And picking up that quick, 8 to 12 yards. There's been a number of games where he's been that wide receiver for us. And, but I think with him or Myers hitting the open market, there's just a lot of wide receiver hungry teams, a lot of young quarterbacks. And we've seen what getting a even reasonably competent set of receivers can do for a player's development. I mean, we're seeing that time and time again. So I think whatever does hit the market is probably going to be at a premium this year.
Yeah. I mean, Zach mentioned Christian Kirk, which was probably an overpay, but Jaguars
But
certainly
look what it did. I mean, they used them, and
they did.
Sure, they don't
did.
regret
to
it.
their credit. Yeah,
They got the most, even if they technically overpaid, which, I mean, honestly, that's usually how these free agency situations work. It's rare that you're like, I mean, Mr. Technical Vikings fan, we could talk about Kirk Cousins and whether he feels that was a good free agent, but they almost always, you'll get more on the open market, whether that is deserved or not. Kevin, we have multiple Bills things to talk about today. The next on the offseason buzz, Elena Getzenberg of ESPN writes that the Bills appear more likely to sign linebacker Tremaine Edmonds than they do safety Jordan Poyer. I'm not sure I agree that that's the way to go, but you're the Bills fan, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. Quickly, when they lost Micah Hyde and Poyer for part of the season, that secondary, I felt, they had Tre'Davious White was not really full strength till late. It became a real liability. You got Matt Milano. Would you rather see them bring Edmonds back than Poyer?
Yeah, it's a very nuanced discussion, and unfortunately, given
we're here for the nuanced discussion.
Yeah, there's so much to it. So given the nature of my fandom, I've been preparing for this conversation for over a year. We already knew that these contracts were going to expire at the same time.
Kevin wakes up in the morning, he's like, Edmonds or Poyer?
No, seriously, it's tough, man. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you my thoughts. I think Poyer is invaluable, and he's proven that time and time again. He is so tough. He's such a great leader. He takes away so much over the top. And when him and Hyde are together, good luck throwing deep on the Bills. It basically doesn't happen. So that's a really tough pill to swallow, to think that we might have to lose Poyer this year. But Edmonds is younger than a lot of the guys coming in this year after his 5th year. He's one of those, came in the league at like 19. So he's got an unbelievable shelf life. And the things that he does as the captain of the defense, again, invaluable. He sort of has these like long pterodactyl wingspan arms, and he erases so much from the middle of the field that we don't even see. Like, he doesn't really make a lot of splash plays, which is kind of unfortunate because that's kind of what you look for from like an off-ball linebacker. But he takes so much off the menu, and he's also such a great leader, and he's so young. And Poyer's 32, coming off of a season where he had a torn meniscus and a hyperextended elbow.
True.
So I understand the discourse, and I'm never going to say a bad thing about Jordan Poyer. And if we could find a way to get both, that would be unbelievable. But if I had to pick one, I would pick Edmonds, given age and positional value. I think they got a new safeties coach yesterday, and I think he's going to prove to be pretty valuable at helping develop. We should still have Hyde for another year or two. And then it'll be interesting to see where they go to fill the void at safety. But I would rather keep Edmonds personally. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts.
Well, we got a lot to get through. We're not going to dive into all that.
Okay.
I know you're like,
okay.
Bills.
I'm
Let's
ready.
just talk Bills.
Let's do it.
I wanted to get your thoughts on that. And then let's move on to the technical Vikings fan.
Here we go.
NFC North. Colton Pouncey of The Athletic thinks that running back Jamal Williams returning to the Lions is a realistic possibility. Williams was not overly efficient in 2022, 4.1 yards per carry, but 17 rushing touchdowns. Actually set the single season record for the Lions, beating Barry Sanders. Zach, do you think Jamal should return? Do you think the Lions should want him back? How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, I think for him, the best thing is to return. And I think it's kind of a mutual situation where he understands he's not a top 5 running back in the NFL, and the Lions kind of do. But I think that's kind of one of those situations where it goes a little bit beyond what happens on the field. The organization loves him. He loves being in Detroit. The fan base loves him. I don't think I've ever seen someone beat a Barry Sanders record in Detroit and have everybody just be thrilled about that. Like that speaks kind of like volumes about how they see him as a player. I don't think he can get to that 17 touchdown mark again, but who knows? You never know. But I do think it's in his best interest to return.
DeAndre Swift fantasy owners hope that he doesn't.
I'm one of them in like 3 dynasty leagues. So I think it'd be best for my fantasy teams if he doesn't return. Right. But he's not gonna get a big bag from another team if he goes into parts. And I really think they've got a lot of love there in that relationship with him, the fan base, just how well he works with that offensive scheme, his kind of angry running style. So I do think they'll bring him back. I think it'll be one of those rare team friendly deals of the free agency where it's like, hey, maybe they sign him for 2-3 years for just a couple mil, like a smaller running back contract. But I don't see him really gaining more interest than what that fan base already loves about him.
He's also, I'm going to go ahead and say it, one of the best post-game interviews in the NFL.
If not the best.
If not the best. The way you saw that, the range of emotion he showed beating the Packers in the final game was fantastic. So I'll cue this last one up for you, Jeff. Michael Rothstein of ESPN thinks the Falcons are likely to prioritize the re-signing of left tackle Caleb McGarry, who broke out with an 86.6 PFF grade. We don't have to talk specifically about that. I want to talk more about the Falcons' approach in general. Arthur Smith, overly dedicated to the run. So I think bringing back one of their offensive linemen, who most of that PFF grade was due to their run blocking, Desmond Ridder going into his second year. My preseason fantasy favorite, Tyler Algier, really showing off, and I think still underrated at this point. Do you like this move, bringing back one of the anchors of the offensive line that really helped them run the ball so well?
I mean, here's the thing. Can you ever vote against bringing back talent on an offensive line? Like pass game, run game, I don't think it is so integral to, as a Chiefs fan, we were talking before the show about, us losing in the Super Bowl. Why did we lose? We lost because we had no offensive line to speak of. I mean, there's only so much heroics skilled position players can do. It's just, for me,
AKA Patrick Mahomes.
If you're in a good situation where you can come to an agreement with an offensive lineman, they're worth their weight in gold and they weigh a lot. So I think it's a no-brainer.
I love that. They're worth their weight in gold and
Thanks,
they
just
weigh a lot.
It's a bar.
You sure? That sounds pre-scripted. Either way, I'm going to pretend you came up with it right now.
I wish I could say that I prepped so much that I came up with that one beforehand.
He's just a natural, that Jeff. All right, let's go on to the next legit headline. Buffalo Bills look into, quote, legitimate changes at wide receiver. Clearly, Kevin, I'm queuing this one up for you. Here are the details. The Athletic's Joe Biscaglia writes that the Bills will look into making legitimate changes at the wide receiver position this offseason. He notes that the Bills lacked consistency opposite Stephon Diggs, allowing opposing secondaries to scheme around stopping the All-Pro, including in the divisional round loss to Cincinnati. Gabe Davis led the team in drops with 9. Buffalo can't afford to lose a big-name free agent due to cap space, or to pursue a big-name free agent due to cap space limitations. So probably looking at a wide receiver early in the draft. Some options listed here: TCU's Quentin Johnson, Boston College Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison of USC, Ohio State Jackson Smith in Jigba, and Tennessee's Jalen Hyatt. The Bills have the number 27 pick, Kevin.
Yeah, dude, it's a fascinating offseason discussion because, there's a lot to be said for the hype that Gabe Davis had prior to last season. I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm giving Zach a chance to dunk on me right now. He was very anti-Gabe Davis, and I was very pro-Gabe Davis.
I'm just going to give him the floor after this, and he can say whatever he wants.
Absolutely, yeah. But I do have to say, I love the prospects of adding a receiver. I think Gabe Davis was looked at as a potential 2, and I think we've learned that he's a situational 3, maybe even like a great 4. Unfortunately, like he had 9 drops. Like you just can't have that. And they were at such inopportune times all year. I love the player. I love his skill set, but he alligator arms the ball too much, and he does this like weird clapping thing sometimes on the ball, and like you just can't have that. You're a professional athlete, man. Like Just go to like catching 101, like Google how to catch a football, and he should have a better chance this year. But yeah, I love those names in the draft that you mentioned. I think in Jigba the best, or Zay Flowers. I would love a separator in the slot, like that kind of role. We really have been missing prime Cole Beasley lately. I don't know if we're going to have the resources or the prospects to get like a true alpha opposite Steph Diggs, but like, a player like a Zay Flowers, I would love Jacoby Myers. I mean, I don't think it's likely given the money situation, but a player like that who can just get open, I think that's what Josh Allen needs more than anything.
Zach, I really want to hear your preseason Gabe Davis thoughts. I bought into the hype. I think I mean, like so many people, 4 touchdowns against the Chiefs in the divisional round loss last season. This guy's primed for a breakout. I had at least one Josh Allen, Gabe Davis stack, and I came in dead last in that league. So go figure.
Come on,
Zach,
Gabe.
Your thought on the wide receiver situation in Buffalo?
Yeah, I'm a wide receiver guy at heart. I do a lot of my work at reception where we track just like wide receivers in general. So I guess that's kind of cheating because I used some insight from there where I did a lot of his tracking for the season before. I guess, yeah, it's just called doing a good job. Yeah.
Doing your work.
But I didn't see a special separation. I didn't see any traits that made it be like, okay, he's more than just a big play guy. He's not going to like really separate on those short yardage routes. If he's blanketed, we've got like a secondary bracket, he's not going to break that coverage. I think he's one of the best deep ball receivers in the NFL. And I think that's a great trait to have on your team. So I don't think he's necessarily just like a bad receiver. I just don't think he's going to be a complement to Stephon Diggs, going to be that 1B or that really 2A.
He's never going to draw additional coverage or anything like that. Yeah.
And luckily they have Diggs on the team, so they don't need someone to do that. But I do think they do need some more talent. And I think the lack of depth at the wide receiver and just really offensive positions in general was kind of a big downfall for them this playoff. I think replacing him with Quentin Johnson would be kind of the same thing. He's a big, fast wide receiver that tends to catch the ball with his body a lot. So I think I'm in agreement with Kevin there that I'd like to see a Zay Flowers. If you can get a Jalen Hyatt, maybe later. I don't think they should use their first round pick on a wide receiver when you've got a stud, but maybe a day 2 wide receiver, second, third round would be great. And then I'm personally a big Khalil Shakir fan, so I'd like to see him.
I was going to ask about him next. I want to, because there is a little bit of fantasy hype building around Shakir. He ended the season definitely starting. They were involving him more. He was getting more targets. He showed some flashes with some big play ability. I'm just throwing this out to all three of you, so feel free. Thoughts on Khalil Shakir? Is Isaiah McKenzie? Have we seen his ceiling? Do they have anyone on their roster who could step up next year?
Yeah, I hope to God, no offense. I hope we've seen the last of McKenzie in Buffalo. I love him. He's such a great player. He's such an exciting guy. But again, for where we're at in our process, I just think we have to move forward from players like that. Just too much of a liability at times as a route runner and with the hands. Also mental errors abounding with him. Khalil Shakir, definitely, there should be a drumbeat coming out of Buffalo next year that he's going to be an effective, I think maybe 3. I think he could be a great slot guy as well. If we end up getting an outside guy to complement stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if Shakir occupied that slot.
Well, we will excited to see what happens, especially in the draft. One of my favorite times of the NFL calendar. Let's talk about, stay on the wide receiver topic. PFF just started projecting contracts for various wide receivers. We'll talk about today Odell, Michael Thomas. Yeah, he's still around. Remember him from the Saints? Used to be good. And Allen Lazard, interestingly, on this list. Jeff, we'll start with Beckham. PFF's Brad Spielberger is projecting $33 million over 3 years, with $21.5 million guaranteed for Beckham. He was actually fantastic during the Rams playoff run 2 years ago. 84.7 PFF grade. Expected to attract significant interest. We've been covering the Odell thing all year. Ended up not signing with anybody. Cowboys and Rams are expected to be suitors. Do you have a destination that you think could be a front runner for him there, Jeff?
I mean, I could see somebody like the Cowboys going for it. Personally, though, at that price, I mean, that's a lot of money to tie up in a receiver who I have doubts that we'll see a actual productive season from him ever again. I mean, which is sucks to say, but he isn't getting any younger, and he hasn't been able to string together a lot of good, healthy streaks. And so I don't know, like it's sad to say, or even to think about that, but like, I don't know, to me, that's a lot of money. And if that's like the one piece that pushes you to be able to be a Super Bowl contender, then sure, I suppose go for it. But I don't think maybe that works out year 1, but by the time year 3 rolls around with something like that, I mean, that's just dead money. It feels like.
I'm not sure the Rams can sign him either. I don't think they're in.
I was also curious about that. I saw, I was looking at things. I didn't look at that, but that was also a question of like, I don't even know where cap space wise. So I'm not completely in the off season yet, so I haven't done all of the looking around quite.
Shame on you. You don't know everybody's cap space and cap number yet, Jeff. Come on.
I know. I'm sorry. I had to.
Yeah, somebody's team is still in the playoffs. Ooh, thanks for reminding us.
Tough guy.
So we know these teams can kind of finagle and magician their ways with these salary caps.
Yeah.
An excellent example of that is the New Orleans Saints. the architect behind a lot of that, Sean Payton, now in Denver. Spielberger thinks that Michael Thomas may have to settle for $12.5 million over 1 year with $10 million guaranteed. This is a guy who's played, I don't know, 3 football games over like the past 2 to 3 seasons at this point. 29, somehow still in his 20s. I feel like he should be 35 at this point. Could we see, Zach, a reuniting in Denver with Peyton? Is that on the palette for these guys?
I think that could be kind of tough. Partially off of what you said, like, yeah, they can finagle cap space, but I'm not sure that's where they're planning on dedicating their cap volume.
They have weapons in Denver for sure.
Yeah. No, they could use, I think, a consistent third, but I don't think that's what you're bringing in Michael Thomas for. It kind of shocked me that they're projecting Thomas to get less of a deal than Beckham, just based off of like injury history and stuff. Like Beckham's knee injury seemed to be like a huge concern for the Cowboys. The fact that he didn't get a contract the postseason kind of, I feel like, speaks volumes. Whereas I think the Saints and Michael Thomas are ready to part ways, and he could land himself a good contract. I still think he can produce as like a big slot, like kind of post like prime Larry Fitzgerald, where you saw him move into the slot as like just a possession type wide receiver. I still think Michael Thomas can really, maybe not thrive, but like be very consistent in a role like that on a 1-year contract. And I think there's plenty of teams that could use that. I mean, with cap space, you have like the Giants sitting there with really no valuable wide receiver on their roster. You got the Ravens who are looking to revamp all of their roster, and they've got a good amount of cap space pending Lamar Jackson's possible contract. I don't know if Denver would be a great fit. I do see the Sean Payton connect, but I think there was still some bad blood there with how that played out in the end. Sure. So I'm not sure if he really makes the concerted effort to kind of tie that up and bring him back. But who knows? They need to get that offense together, and whatever Sean Payton thinks is the best way to do that is certainly what he's going to do. He's not shy about making the moves he wants. So we'll get to find out, luckily.
I would assume that the difference in contract projections between Beckham and Thomas is due to recency bias and the fact that everybody remembers the last time we saw Beckham on the field, he was catching a touchdown in the Super Bowl before blowing out his knee for like the 17th time. Versus we haven't really seen short spurts. And I agree with you, Zach. Thomas actually looked good for the 3 games he played this year. There was at least one game I think he had two scores. It's like, okay, dude can still
he started off quite hot this year. I think he had 3 touchdowns in 3 games type scenario, and then of course another injury. So you got that murky in the water.
I think giving either guy double-digit million is a bad idea. Personally, given their health histories, I wouldn't go north of $8 million for either. And last but not least, Zach, how dare you say the Giants have no valuable wide receivers on their team? Isaiah Hodgins would like a word. He's valuable. I'm a big fan.
I thought that was going to be a Kenny Galladay plug.
He's valuable in a literal sense, in a financial sense.
I believe in Hodgins too. I'm with you.
Hodgins is the man.
Didn't you trade for Hodgins, Jeff? Do you have him on your dynasty?
Yes, I made it. Yep, I've made some moves to own him where
Smart
applicable.
There you go. Yeah. We'll definitely have some fantasy episodes in the off season. We have
cannot wait
into that. Last wide receiver, Allen Lazard. Spielberger's projecting $33 million over 3 years, which I was surprised by. He did have a great year, mainly because there wasn't really anyone else to throw to in Green Bay until Christian Watson came back and scored 9 touchdowns in 6 games. Romeo Doubs showed some flashes, but he ended up getting injured. But good run blocker. He had that one where he threw the 3 Dolphins down and then counted. That burned in my mind. Kevin, just quickly, do you think that a team besides Green Bay would pay Lazard? Would Green Bay even pay Lazard $33 million over 3 years, especially if Rodgers isn't there?
I was going to say, I think a lot of his ties to Green Bay had to do with the Rodgers connection. I wouldn't rule out a Rodgers following wherever Rodgers goes, seeing Lazard follow. I think Lazard is very similar to a Gabe Davis, a little bit of a hands issue, big frame, good down the field, but not really that much of an elite separator, not really that much of an elite anything other than, go deep and get open. But I don't think 333 again. I think that's an overpayment, but I think he could get that maybe like a Vegas sort of situation, or like, cause I heard they're looking to trade Hunter Renfrow. So maybe going to a team like that who's willing to overpay a receiver. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go somewhere like that.
All right, let's quickly get into one more headline, and then I want to get to our main topic and talk about some coaches. The Rams are hoping to build off Cam Akers' late season breakout. We've seen this story before. Cam Akers plays well to end the season, lots of hype, did get injured, and didn't look the same when he came back, but he did start to produce. I'm glad I held on to him in at least one of my dynasty leagues, mainly because I couldn't sell him, but I'll happily reap the benefits there. So the insight comes from The Athletic's Jordan Rodrigue, who writes that Sean McVay wants to reassess the Rams' previous committee approach. This is interesting for fantasy purposes, and lean more on Akers as the primary back. He rushed for 345 yards and 3 touchdowns for nearly 5.5 yards per carry across the final 3 games for LA. Still only 23 years old. Zach, I'll start with you on this one. Do you think that Akers thing is for real? Do you think that's sustainable, or was it just a blip and everybody's going to oversell him again?
It's so hard because we haven't seen someone really come back from an Achilles injury like that. And we got to see James Robinson early in the year kind of start off hot and then just disappeared, couldn't even make the Jets lineup after Breece Hall went down. So we're still kind of waiting. We saw it a little from Deonta Foreman, which was what he's, I think, 3 or 4 years removed from his big Achilles injury, just starting to see that juice back. If anybody's going to do it, it's going to be someone at that age. So, because we haven't seen someone so young get an Achilles injury and then be able to come back and recover from that. And let's be honest here, the Rams don't really have too much of a choice. They don't really have a lot of draft picks to replace him. They've got no cap space. And if he's coming back next year, sure, why not? Why not hand him the ball off 25 times a game to see if he can handle it? Because I don't think they have a much better replacement. In terms of like dynasty assets and stuff, I'm terrified of him because you're going to be probably wanting no more than like a 2nd round pick for him. And I don't think anybody's going to pay something like that. So it's just like your ultimate lottery ticket of like, can his Achilles fully recover? Can we see that explosiveness? Because I think a lot of his 5 yards a carry was like quick, short stuff, 6-8 yards. You didn't really see the breakaway speed that he had coming out of the draft. If he can get that back, you're hitting that lottery ticket, but we've just never seen it happen before.
Well, like I said, I have at least one share of him, so I hope my lottery ticket goes off. Luckily, I already had him, so I didn't spend anything crazy to acquire him. I got him in the startup draft for this Dynasty League. All right, so let's go ahead to our main topic. So once again, the idea is we'll go through some headlines. We'll give a little bit more room to breathe for one single topic. We're not going to talk quarterbacks today unless it relates to this topic. We'll do that on Monday, but let's talk about coaches. First of all, I'm surprised that there are still 2 vacancies. We'll get to that. Like, how have they not all been filled? Maybe it has to do with certain candidates in the Super Bowl. I've heard Bieniemy, for instance, getting tied to certain offensive coordinator jobs. Shane Steichen, maybe head coaching jobs. But first, let's start with the coaches' hires that have happened. We talked about Frank Reich on a previous episode. That was the first domino to fall. We've talked a little bit about Sean Payton today. So let's start with DeMeco Ryans for the Texans. Jeff, I'll let you start with this one. I saw this as the most obvious fit. How do you feel about the Texans as a landing spot for any head coach, but especially one who has ties, was drafted by the Houston Texans, was a defensive rookie of the year for Houston? How do you like this combination? I
think first off, with a team like this that you're taking over, there's going to be an uphill battle to some degree. So, acknowledging that, though, given his background with the organization, I think there's an opportunity for that to go well. I also think that even though, when you come into a team like this, you have a lot of work ahead of you. I haven't looked up what the current state of their draft capital is, but it's quite significant.
Well, they got number 2 overall, right?
Right. But I mean, outside of that, even too, I think they have a lot of darts to throw. And if any of those, if those hit, and you have some people that can contribute year one, you're looking at a team that you can start to build momentum with. Whereas there's, you're coming in and you're coming off of a mixed season, lots of close games, but not a whole lot to show for it at a lot of the times. But I think there you could see flashes where they had some bright spots on the roster. And if they can fill some holes and start to turn things around, I think there's a good opportunity. But it also could be a 1-year thing and it blows up. I mean, when you're taking over a team like the Texans, that very well could happen.
Fourth coach in 4 years, Kevin. I hope for his sake. He did sign a 6-year contract, so at some point,
that's the second.
The Texans can't just keep on signing guys and then end up having to pay them over many years. But how do you like this hire, Kevin? Do you think? I mean, DeMeco Ryans. They lost Robert Saleh, the Niners did, to a head coach of the Jets. DeMeco Ryans comes in and actually does even better. Obviously, he's a player, a former player with a great track record of success in the NFL, and this Niners defense was the best we've seen in many years. I'm going to go ahead and say that. So how do you like this fit, and do you think he can turn things around in Houston?
Yeah, so you know me, and this is something that I kind of constantly bang the drum for, but I'm a huge culture guy, and I think that culture is massive when it comes to a former player who has a legacy coming back to his former team. I think that's a huge kind of like instant like burst of positive energy surrounding the situation. He's got skin in the game because it's his career and it's his bag, but also he's got a legacy to protect and also to build upon. So I think he's going to have a lot invested in the positive momentum of the franchise. Now, they're in a good position because, like you said, they have the second overall pick and they have the potential to get out of quarterback purgatory with that pick. Davis Mills has been kind of just good enough to not, be. I mean, I was going to say to not be outright benched, but he got outright benched
to be maybe a decent backup quarterback.
Sure, that's exactly how I look at Davis Mills moving forward. I think he'll be a great backup. But yeah, so if they can get out of quarterback purgatory, they had Jeff mentioned some great stretches this past season, even with their awful record of being competitive in games. They took Jeff's Chiefs to overtime. I want to highlight that if you want to put that in a neon sign. They went to the overtime with the Kansas City Chiefs, Jeff.
It's true.
he just said that like 4 times.
Just so Jeff knows. I just want to make
digging
sure.
that, yeah.
But
sitting
so
here like, I don't care.
We lost to the Colts.
Super Bowl. He's like, Super
Let's
Bowl.
see. AFC title game 5 years in a row. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
No, it's fair. No, yeah, so I love the hiring personally, but I think it's definitely going to be something time will tell, but I'm 2 thumbs up from me.
Zach, NFL Rums in the chat brought up a great point. Dameon Pierce definitely hit there at running back. We know he got injured and missed the past few games, but was an absolute steal. And what was it, the 4th round that they got him in? So you got a solid running game, at least there to start. And they hit some rookies on the defense. Jalen Petrie, Stingley before he got injured. So there are some pieces there. They haven't hired an offensive coordinator yet or a DC, but you got to imagine DeMeco is going to be primarily in charge of the defense. Are there some things to build on here in Houston?
Yeah, I think so for sure. And I like echoing what Kevin said, they competed in a lot of games people didn't expect them to compete. And that, to me, I mean, I didn't hate Lovey, but also at the same time, that means they have talent on the roster. And we talked about it.
He was always a fall guy, though. Same with Cutley. That's weird because they've had 2 fall guys in 2 seasons. Everybody knew going in that neither one of those guys were going to last.
I think you see a bit of culture change too with DeMeco because he's younger, and to me that signifies that they're maybe going to give him the chance at like more than 1 year to fix this thing, which is great because you can't fix the Texans in 1 year. It's just not going to happen. He's got 11 draft picks this year to do it: a 1st, a 2nd overall, a 12th overall, the 33rd overall. So like they have some capital. I hope they don't replace Dameon Pierce, but I don't see them leaving this draft without another running back at least drafted, because they had 0 young depth in there coming in the offseason. So I do think he'll still be important, but I think they will leave day 2 with a running back as well. So that's kind of important to watch from a fantasy aspect. I love the signing. I think he should have been probably the number 1, if not the number 2 prospect for a head coach this offseason. And I really hope they give him more than 1 year to fix this team, because I think he could do great things with the defensive pieces that he's already got, and then let someone run that offense.
Well, Jeff, I want to specifically comment on this number 1 head coaching, because I think he was number 1, and I think there was another team, it was reported, there was another team who wanted him and was trying up until the day, and then they make this big announcement, they hire Sean Payton. That is the Denver Broncos from your AFC West. So I want to dive into that a little bit. And let's go ahead and mention the 2 most prominent NFL insiders were completely different on the takes here. Ian Rappaport saying that They tried to hire Jim Harbaugh, even after he said he was staying at Michigan. That didn't happen. They tried to hire DeMeco Ryans, including calling him on the day that he ended up getting announced as a head coach. And then they're like, oh, yeah, Sean Payton, come on over, work with Russ. As a Chiefs fan and just somebody who follows the AFC West, let us know your insight on this whole Broncos fiasco and how Payton fits there.
So first off, what a Broncos way to do things. Like, you're going to bring in Sean Payton, but you're going to find every opportunity to like make that be as bittersweet of a like day zero meeting possible. So good job, Broncos. You found out a way to even screw up hiring Sean Payton.
Broncos country. That's right.
Yeah. That said, if Broncos, it probably couldn't ask for much of a better option than Sean Payton if they're going to turn something around with Russ. I do think that there's good hope that he can use Wilson for what he's good at and not try to force him into something that isn't going to set him up for success. I think with this move, you definitely realize that you have to play to Russ's strengths for him to be a capable quarterback. And, that just is what it is. And I think Sean Payton has the opportunity to make that happen. But also it's the Broncos, and man, have they strung together some poor seasons and some poor off seasons. So we'll have to see. I think it's more than just a coaching problem. They have lots of, their locker room is in shambles to some degree. They're especially amongst their offensive weapons. They
no longer have draft capital because they got a first because they traded away Bradley Chubb. Oh, and there goes the first. We haven't said that they actually had to pay draft capital to get Peyton, the first this year as well as the second next year. They're hamstrung with that Russ contract in the first place. You have no choice but to let's ride with Russ, because what else are you going to do?
Whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
I texted Kevin that morning of like, did they overpay for Sean Payton? I thought about it deep down afterwards. I think he might be the best move for the Broncos, because I think a coach like DeMeco Ryans coming in first head coaching job is not the move for that locker room. If it pans out, a first round pick for great head coaching is not a bad pay.
And I think they're already all in on Russ. So it's like, if you've already gone this far, what's
down,
another
baby?
first? Just double down. And I completely agree, Zach. I do think that Peyton it's actually good that they lost these other guys. Harbaugh actually might have been able to come in and do it too. But DeMeco, who at least at this point, I have very high faith that he'll be a solid head coach. But we just saw a first-time head coach basically just give the keys to Russ and let him drive the car, and he couldn't even get it out of the driveway. So having a guy like Peyton who is going to come in, be the alpha, and say like, look, this is how we're going to do things. Here's the offense we're going to run. Russ, here's what you're going to do. And I think Russ will respect him enough to act, hopefully, for Broncos fans' sake, to listen. I think that's their best shot. I'm not saying it's going to work, but I think it's their best shot to actually make it work, is getting a guy like Peyton to come in there and kind of be the alpha for Russ, so that Russ has to listen instead of just thinking he knows everything about how to run this offense. I want to talk about the head coach vacancies. Then we can talk about some of the maybe OC, DC hires and that kind of thing. Because I mentioned at the top of the show, I can't believe there's still two vacancies. So we got the Arizona Cardinals and the Indianapolis Colts. Kevin, is there one of these, first of all, that is a more attractive landing spot for head coaches? And then I want to talk about, and we can ask everybody about this, are there certain candidates in the Super Bowl that we think these teams are targeting? Or the fact that Jim Irsay is having 3 rounds of head coaching interviews, is that just a sign of just how inept this Colts organization is right now?
Yeah, so given the nature of both jobs, it would be easier if the Cardinals weren't the Cardinals and if Kyler wasn't Kyler, because I think the answer is the Cardinals. I think Kyler Murray
also, by the way, is not going to be ready for the start of the season and might not be fully recovered until midseason because the ACL tear was so late.
And that's just a whole nother thing. So I think that the lack of quarterback competency and also Jim Irsay make the Colts less attractive. But that being said, the Cardinals, like I said, with the Kyler Murray situation and the sort of year-by-year ineptitude that we've seen organizationally from the Cardinals, it definitely makes them they're blemished up a little bit. They're not like this premium, like, vacation destination for a head coach. But you could do a lot worse than having a quarterback on a, I wouldn't say a great contract, but on a long contract. And, they got
just specifically on the vacation destination. At least we know what Cliff Kingsbury house looks like in Arizona.
That's true. So
that's much better than Indianapolis.
That does help. And if you take the job, you get the house, I heard, with the
yeah, you know what? Cliff is in Thailand or something right now, or Vietnam. So yeah, the house is vacant. Take it.
He might as well just call whoever they hire and offer it to him.
Zach, Kyler, we mentioned, not going to be ready for the start of the season, but he's still there. They just re-signed him. He's at least there for at least the foreseeable next 2 to 3 years. On the Colts side, they're zero quarterbacks. Let's just say Sam Ehlinger, not the option. Foles and Ryan are not going to be back. I'm assuming Ryan will retire, and Foles was a free agent, and I doubt they bring him back. They have the number 9 pick. It's not like they're in the top 5 here. Maybe they trade up. Does the fact that at least one of the organizations has a franchise quarterback and one is that a good thing or a bad thing for a potential head coach?
Yeah, and I think the Colts have the 4 pick, don't they?
Is it 4?
I think they're in the top 5.
Okay. Oh, the Panthers have 9.
Yes,
that's what I was thinking, because the Panthers. I'm going
also
through my head like that was where it was. It was like, which teams need quarterback and where do they draft? The Panthers are 9. You're right. Colts are 4. So Colts are going to be in position, in all likelihood, to land one of these top QB prospects.
Yeah, it does make a difference for me, and I'm not in agreement with Kevin on this one. I think the Cardinals' job is just glaringly better. If you have a solve at the quarterback position at the level of, I mean, we could say Kyler Murray's at least a top 12 quarterback in the NFL, and that's like,
I can be on board with that. Yeah,
be okay, and that's, let's say, healthy. Yeah, right now, obviously, no. But
if no Call of Duty updates come out in the last month, yeah, he's good.
Sure, I think a lot of that tends to get a bit over.
It does. It's just fun to talk about.
It's so funny.
Absolutely, but at the same time, I hated Cliff Kingsbury, so I didn't blame Kyler Murray for hating him. So it's like, okay. And then they have a brand new GM. They brought in, oh man, I don't know if I can pronounce his name perfectly.
I was waiting for you to do it. I wasn't going to try it.
Let me check. I'll look it up here. But they brought him over from the Titans. It's Monty Austinfort. Yeah, that's what it is. Thank you. Austinfort, yeah. So you have a team that's kind of like a blank slate in terms of leadership. You're going to walk in as a head coach with a franchise quarterback already there. You have some decent offensive pieces, and you have some draft capital. That to me is like you're in the same position as the Colts, except you already have your franchise quarterback there. So as long as you like Kyler Murray, that's kind of the glaring one for me. But I think there's a lot of really good candidates on these postseasons. I mean, you have Bieniemy, you've got Lou Anarumo, who really revolutionized that Bengals defense. I think he is going to win himself a head coaching job at an offensive coordinator. I mean, defensive coordinator.
He's a sleeper.
Bare minimum.
He's a name to watch.
I think he interviewed with Arizona, correct? Yeah. So
yeah,
I actually think he could be a great candidate just based on how he's run that Bengals defense, which is not filled with stars. And the fact that they were playing as a top 10 defense for most of the year is a testament to his coaching.
The weekly scheme evolution is just like, that could change the game.
So I want to break down my views on the two of these, and then let's see if we can have a definitive idea of which one's better. Zach is clearly in the Arizona, and I see. So the question really becomes, I think the Colts are a better roster overall, completely devoid of quarterback, whereas the Cardinals have so many roster issues. Their secondary is a big issue. They were basically devoid of pass rush this year. The defense in general, you have some pieces there like Isaiah Simmons, Zaven Collins. They've been good and shown flashes, but nothing elite across the board, short of maybe Budda Baker.
Right.
And the offensive side of the ball, they had one of the most injured offensive lines, but even before that, not a lot of pop. DeAndre Hopkins, it looks like he could be on a different team.
Good as gone
next year.
Yeah.
Right. So Zach Ertz, you got Trey McBride. I actually liked how he played towards the end of the season, but you don't have a whole lot of pieces. James Conner is fine. Right. But certainly nobody's idea of a running back that's going to take you to the next level. On the other side of the ball, Jonathan Taylor. I don't think this year was representative of we've seen his ceiling, right? The Colts offensive line historically has been one of the best in the NFL. They were really bad this year, but they've still got Quentin Nelson. They've got pieces on there. You think about the defensive side of the ball. Michael Pittman, you've got pieces. I like Alec Pierce. I think he's going to have a nice jump. So you've got more pieces, but no quarterback. As a head coach, do you want to be able to hey, I can pick my QB and either ride or die with that guy? It's more risky. Or like Kyler, I've got Kyler, but I had a whole lot of other things to fix. Jeff, I'll start with you here.
Yeah, that's what I was looking and just trying to think through. Do you like the better roster with the question mark at quarterback? But it depends on how you feel about who you're going to get. For example, if it's
better division too, we should throw that in there, right? So playing in the AFC South is going to be a lot better than playing against the 49ers. The Seahawks made the playoffs with a very talented rookie class. They're only going to get better. I don't think the Rams will stay down forever. Does that factor into it?
I hadn't even thought about that, but I feel now that you've said that, I was kind of on the fence. I was trying to be contrarian, but now I feel even less I'm more or less trying to play devil's advocate and actually believe it. But I don't
pick
know,
a side, Jeff. Pick a side.
I'm picking the side. I think the Colts, at least being able to pick your own quarterback, means that you definitely get to own the locker room and you don't inherit all the weirdness with Kyler. Maybe that is overblown. There definitely seems to be something there. To what extent does it actually matter? I don't know. Hard to say. But I don't know. I think the overall roster, plus if you do feel like you have a quarterback in this draft that really does seem like could be your guy, and you can believe in that and build around that player, then I think there's a lot of opportunity in Indianapolis.
All right, so we know where Jeff stands, Kevin, and then I want to see if Zach's changed his mind.
Yeah, so I was definitely 55-45 before. I think I'll stay on the side leaning Cardinals just because we're talking about what's behind door number one with the Colts, and I understand that is at times
mystery
better.
Box. I like the mystery
box.
It
could even be a boat, who knows?
It could be anything. It could be a quarterback like Kyler Murray.
Yeah, literally. So I was 55-45. I'll move my percentage down to 51-49 because I still think that Jim Irsay is a weirdo, according to Josh McDaniels. That's the funniest. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have heard that.
I don't think it's an opinion. I think we can all agree objectively that Jim Irsay is a weirdo.
Yeah, so that's kind of a tough pill. I like what Brian and Jeff, you guys made some great points, and you brought my percentage right down. I love Kenny Moore. He's such a good slot corner. The linebacker position over there in Indianapolis, Kwity Paye, they have a lot of pieces on the defensive side of the ball.
Shaq Leonard, although he's had some injury issues that have continued to plague him, but when he's on, he's an all-pro level linebacker.
But the door number one effect, I'm a gambler, so usually I would go behind that door. But when it comes to the quarterback position, having seen from 2005 to 2018 without a quarterback in Buffalo, I know what that's like. That's 13 years. That's tough. So I think I'll take a hobbled Call of Duty loving Kyler Murray over door number one in this case.
As a Dolphins fan, who you can say what you want about Tua, but he's the best hope we've had at quarterback for 20 years.
Tua.
Yeah, I could definitely relate in the post Dan Marino areas. Zach, one more chance. You still leaning on going with the QB that you have, or do you think the roster and the chance to pick your own QB makes it a little bit more enticing for a head coach?
I got to stick with it. I worry too much that Young and Stroud will be off the board by the 4 pick. Sure. I don't have as much confidence in Will Levis if, let's say, he's the 3 they decide to go with. And the Cardinals have the 3rd overall pick. So they can still take some blue chip talent with that and help fix their team a bit. So I'm still sticking with the quarterback I think I have, and I'll ride with that. The talent, I think they can fix the other talent easier than you can betting on a quarterback always.
And I think I like that because I think the Colts and weird Jim Irsay are fed up with trying the veteran QB option, right? Because that's the other thing. If it is down to Will Levis, which I think if he's there, whatever you feel about it, I'm actually seeing a lot of conflicting reports about Levis. People are either have them as his number 1 quarterback or number 5, which is a little concerning. Yeah. But I think that Irsay's going to say, I don't want to go the veteran route. We went Rivers and Wentz and Ryan and Foles, and it's like, no, Yikes. Let's get a rookie. So even you're almost pigeonholed in there as a new head coach. So I'm going to stay on. I'll say I'll say Colts just for the sake of us getting 2-2.
I like it.
But I don't feel great about it. All right, I want to do a little bit of a lightning round here, and then we can wrap up the show for some of the coordinator hires that have been done, and just like good hire, bad hire, and maybe like a quick sentence or two on why. We'll go around the horn. Kevin, then Jeff, then Zach. Kellen Moore, new offensive coordinator for the LA Chargers.
Slam dunk. That's a great hire. Unbelievable that he was even let go. Such a weird fall guy situation.
Well, I think that he asked to let go. I think that especially when the Chargers got rid of Lombardi, he knew that the target could be coming on him as the fall guy already. So it made mutual parting of, it's not usually the case. I think in this case it was mutual, and that Moore's like, hey guys, just I'll go. You do what you want.
I think it's great. I think it's 2 thumbs up.
That's you, Jeff. You're up next. Going around the horn.
Oh,
Kellen Moore.
Oh,
was he not paying attention? All right, Skip.
No.
I'm with Joe. I thought we were going like one hire per person.
I thought that too.
Okay. Even better. That's my fault as a host for not properly explaining.
I like either
Well,
format.
then I'm like, wait, I didn't zone out so much that I didn't hear who I was going to be talking about.
Okay, good call. You guys all understood the assignment. I did not, even though I gave
so
the assignment. Jeff, Mike LaFleur, new OC for the LA Rams.
It'll be interesting to see how he fits with McVay. We'll see, and also just how that ends up playing out in general. But they have to do something different than what they had. So it's not, obviously that was a bit of a mess, and they've paid for their championship, but they still have a lot of talent on that roster, and I would consider them to be significantly underperforming. So an opportunity to maybe right size a bit coming into next year. So I think it's a good opportunity just from the standpoint of the team that you have. And while they do have gaps to fill, you still have a lot of people that won a Super Bowl on that team not too long ago. So,
all right. So Nathaniel Hackett, Jets, Zach.
Dang, I was really hoping you're going to give me Vic.
We're doing OC. We'll go back around the horn for the couple of
Fair enough. I don't like the hire. Not that I didn't like him as an offensive coordinator.
Real
with the
quick
Packers,
caveat. If Rodgers goes there, does that change it?
Okay, we've watched them try and bait Hackett in front of Rodgers before. It didn't work. They ended up with Russ. So I'm not sure. What if he doesn't like Hackett and it's a big I don't want to be there scenario?
Funny. That is so funny.
So I'm happy to look at just like I don't think what he did in Denver is a true indicator of who he is, but I'm not confident he was even better than LaFleur as an offensive coordinator. So I don't think it was a great hire. I think they moved too quickly. I think they could have got a better option there with a talented young roster. It's a pretty inviting team if you're going to get a coach. So I think he was kind of bottom of the barrel for offensive coordinator hires.
I think he is a downgrade from Mike LaFleur. I think Kevin knows. He's called plays for the Bills. He called plays for Jacksonville. Everybody says, oh, he had one good year. That Jacksonville team was run by the defense, and the other 2 years he was calling plays for the Jaguars did not go well. I think unless you get Rodgers, this is a complete fail. I'm going to quickly comment on Bill O'Brien. This was probably the most no-duh hire. They probably should have done this last year instead of trying to get the Matt Patricia, Joe Judge offensive coordinator experience to work. But if you're going to salvage this and you can't bring back Josh McDaniels from Vegas, Bill O'Brien makes the most sense. A lot of people remember his time in Houston for the bad personnel moves he made, but he was actually a pretty good coach, especially on the offensive side of the ball. When he did have Watson, that these were good offenses in Houston. They were perennially a playoff team, even if they didn't really go very far. They won multiple division titles. So I do like this. Hopefully that, for the Patriots' sake, that Mac Jones can get back on track with an actual offensive coordinator calling the plays. We'll go 2 more. And Zach, since you're so eager to talk about Vic Fangio in Miami as the new DC, I'll let you go there.
Listen, I love Vic. I think he's one of the best defensive coordinators that's in the NFL. He's been working on this Eagles team. Not a lot of people know that, but he's been working with the Eagles team as kind of like a advice giver, not like a real position. But it just reminds me so much of like Wade Phillips with the Broncos, like just kind of got that like really great defensive scheme. I think Miami has a ton of talent on that defense that people don't even realize is there. And I'd love to see a really good defensive coordinator put them to work. And I'm very excited about the kind of like the new age offense. And then you pair that with like a hard hitting, like stingy defense. That it really excites me what's going on in Miami. I think he was probably the perfect defensive coordinator hire for them.
Yeah, as a Dolphins fan, completely agree. I was worried when it was first announced, and then all of a sudden, wait, no, it's not official. Maybe he goes to San Francisco. Maybe he goes to Denver.
Change.
I'm like, please no, keep him in Miami. So I'm very excited for that exact reason, Zach, is this idea of this new age Mike McDaniel, Shanahan offense, high scoring, scheming guys open. Hopefully Tua is playing at the level he did this year with using the defensive talent they have, and they do have quite a bit. In this more old school, tough, hard hitting, great scheme, doesn't let up the big plays, Fangio style offense. Jeff, I have a separate question for you. So I'm going to get the final DC hire to Kevin, because the question for you is Chiefs related. Jim Schwartz, former head coach, running the defense for the Cleveland Browns. That's you, Kevin.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
I thought I queued you up.
You did a good job.
He's
I
just
thought
looking
the
like,
question
okay,
was coming first. I thought it's all good.
No, I'm doing the Chiefs question last. We're finishing the coordinator hires.
Okay, because you know what? I was actually jealous. I thought I didn't get Jim Schwartz. I love Jim Schwartz. I think it's a great hire. He's a fantastic defensive coordinator. Super, super great, like schematically sound. Again, I'm always going to do this because when you give me layups like this, I can take them. But he coached one of the best defenses I've ever seen in Buffalo for a couple of years, back in the mid-2010s, I believe. And it was tragic when they hired Rex Ryan and then Jim Schwartz had to hit the skids, because I really like Jim Schwartz as a defensive coordinator. I think it's a great hire for the Browns. They also have a lot of pieces. You know, Myles Garrett, obviously, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Denzel Ward. That's as good of a three-pack as you're going to get on any – and they're young too. So I definitely think
nailed
that's
that
a great
pronunciation,
hire.
by the way, Chief. Congrats.
Owusu-Koramoah, thank you.
You could tell it, the brain, like the gears were turning. Is like, gotta nail this, and he did.
Yeah, my uncle's a Notre Dame fan, so all those weird linebacker names I got you on.
So Jeff, the question I want to ask you, and then we can wrap up the show, is your offensive coordinator has been the speculation of various head coaching opportunities for multiple years, and Eric Bieniemy has not landed one. Now we're seeing him tied as a possible OC to some of these teams that have vacancies. What is your thoughts on Eric Bieniemy? We know that Andy Reid calls the plays, but do you think that he'd be best suited going to call plays at another team before he gets a head coaching opportunity?
I would. I mean, maybe he will go to another team as an offensive coordinator. But what are you looking for? And I know the play calling control probably would feel good, but you're giving up the opportunity to coach alongside Andy Reid. You're coaching an offense with Patrick Mahomes. I don't think you go anywhere, and just because you're calling plays, you're going to give yourself any better of a shot to be a head coach. And so if he gets an offer to be a head coach somewhere else, sure. But I would be very surprised if play calling control is enough to get him off the Chiefs. I think people underestimate how much he does enjoy working in this environment, and you don't get to see it a lot of the times unless you're the sort of person who reads Chiefs beat writer stuff all the time. But the amount of times that he'll do something outside of what you would expect, staying after way after the game and wanting to make sure that he showed appreciation to every offensive lineman after the game that Pat got hurt and we had to watch him hobble along the field all game. Just like he's bought in, and so I would be shocked if he just goes for a lateral move. If it's anything, I hope it's a head coaching position. But
well, let me reframe the question. So we mentioned briefly that he has had multiple interviews, and he's been like the candidate du jour in these offseason cycles until this year. Everybody's like, oh, Eric Bieniemy, he's going to land a position, especially with the success the Chiefs have had on offense, but he hasn't landed it yet. Could there be a scenario where he feels like that's the missing piece? If I can go and prove that it's me and not just Andy Reid, do you think that could factor into it? Let's say Baltimore. Let's say Lamar comes back. They franchise tag him. They sign him, whatever. Would that be something? And he is tied. I've seen, reports that he is tied to a potential candidate to run the offense there with Greg Roman gone. Do you think that might play into it? Like, hey, let me go run an offense with Lamar. Let me show what I can do, and then I can get a head coaching job.
I mean, maybe. There's not a lot of other offensive coordinators of fantastic offensive that have had to go to another offense to prove that they're still fantastic in order to get a shot at a head coaching position.
I agree.
So
I'm not saying it's fair, but I'm saying like,
but,
yes.
But I mean, if he truly feels that the thing that's holding him back is, oh well, anybody could do that under Andy Reid when he's calling plays, and you have Pat Mahomes throwing the ball. So if he genuinely feels that way, I mean, it certainly would give him more, maybe a little bit more proof that he is who he's put on record being. But even still, that feels like an enormous risk, because you go to any of those places, like say you go to Baltimore, and you have a quarterback who likes to get hurt, and he gets hurt, and then that season's a bust, and then you're out of you went to another offense, and that offense did poorly, whether or not that was your fault or not. I mean, that sort of thing can tank whatever opportunities you would have. Whereas the Chiefs, you can only do so bad when you have Mahomes as your quarterback and you're coaching with Andy Reid. So I don't know. It would feel so unnecessary for him to have to prove that direction, though. But
completely agree that it's unnecessary. Just so we're clear, I don't think it's fair. But I'm saying, if you're being me, Kevin, go ahead.
No, yeah, it's a results-based league, so I absolutely get what Jeff is saying. Like, if I mean, the ultimate bet on yourself would be, I want to be a head coach, and I think I'm deserving of it, which everybody who's watched football for the last 10 years knows that he's worthy of being a head coach. But the whole first-time play caller thing, it really is kind of like a cloud over his head a little bit. And, I can speak from, again, like, I think Ken Dorsey he had a lot of learning curves. He had a lot of growing pains. So I understand the whole hesitancy to like make a guy who never called plays or like hasn't called plays in a long time, like right into it being your head coach, right into being the leader of your operation. So I see both sides. It's a difficult situation, because you want to see him get the opportunity he deserves.
Zach, one last thing on Bieniemy. Do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'll go a little contrarian. I do think he leaves the Chiefs this year, even if it's for an offensive coordinator job.
I agree with that. Yeah,
I think he's probably out, whether Super Bowl or win or not. I think he's just been too much disrespected by the league, where it seems like people clearly aren't giving him the credit he deserves from a staff perspective because of Andy Reid. No knock to like Eric Bieniemy, but I think it's just like they know how great of a coach Reid is, and Bieniemy's gone through so many interviews not getting hired. I think he takes either the Titans job as offensive coordinator, Ravens job, I think is also like thing. But I do think he's gone after this year. And I get it, but I think it would suck as well as an offensive coordinator to not be a head coach after all that success.
Yeah, that's really what I was getting at. I don't think it's fair at all, Jeff. I don't think it should be that way. However, if you're Bieniemy and you've gone through multiple cycles where you were the hot candidate and you still didn't get an offer, if that's the one thing that's missing, if you have to go out and prove yourself by being an offensive coordinator at a different team and showing that you can call plays and work not directly under the supervision of a Hall of Fame coach, Andy Reid, just to get to that next step, whether it's fair or not, I do think that's the angle he'll go. So I'm going to agree with Zach. Guys, it has been fantastic. Like I said, I'll talk football all day, every day. Yeah. The fact that we do this as a podcast is just a bonus. Thank you to Kevin Phillip Fox, my official co-host now for the Legit Football NFL podcast. Jeff Schiesser, always an absolute pleasure. I'm going to try to have you on either before or after the Super Bowl, depending on your schedule. No commitment. I'm not asking for it right now, but I'll be texting you. I'll be texting you. And Zach Miller, thank you so much for coming on. Absolutely, we'll have you on again. Check out the Coffee Shop Football podcast. And Zach also does work for Reception Perception. Guys, we've only got one more week to the Super Bowl. We will have a Super Bowl preview next week. We will do a QB breakdown of all the different QB stuff on Monday. So make sure to stay tuned for that. If you're listening or watching for the first time, make sure to subscribe, like, do all that fun stuff. I'm Brian McFadden. This has been the Legit Football NFL podcast. We'll see you on Monday.